Executive Director of the Kentucky Association of Private Providers.
Wonderful. So let's give a round of applause.
Okay, I am Sherry Brothers, like I said, and I'm the Executive Director for the ARC of Kentucky. I'm also a parent of Ben. He has autism, and I have a mother who has a disability as well. She has a traumatic brain injury and a spinal cord injury, and I'm also my aunt, I take care of her, and she has dementia. So I have a lot of disability in my family, and I work with our individuals on a weekly basis, and they really mean a lot to me. I care a lot about them and their supports and their services. I like to talk to them and see what they need and how I can make a difference in their life each week. So I'm going to talk to you about our supports and services that we have in Kentucky, and I will talk about some other national services as well. And the first thing I want to bring up is the ARC of United States and all of the wonderful resources that we have with the ARC of United States. I'm not sure if they can pull up. We had it where we could link in and you could pull up the pages, and I'm not sure if they can now because they put it on a PowerPoint back there, and we had it where we could link in. And when you link into these links, you can see all of the wonderful fact sheets they have. They have a Futures Now program. They have an Autism Now program. They talk about policies, and if you get on there, it's just wonderful. So you need to get on the ARC of United States. They're great in policy. They're like one of the great leaders in making a difference with self-advocates. And we go every year to their policies, their disability policies in DC. And the next thing is the ARC of Kentucky. We are an affiliate of the ARC of United States, and we have chapters in every single state, and we have chapters across each state. And with those, we have self-empowerment groups too, which are self-advocates. And what we have at the ARC of Kentucky is we have free programs for families. And some of those programs are Wings for Autism, Wings for All, and that's a rehearsal program for an airplane. And we go through like the TSA, and it's really nice if you can do it. We're going to have one in Lexington coming up and one in Louisville. So if you watch our website and our Facebook page, you can see all the information about those events. We have the Futures Now, which goes through all of the different planning for your future. It walks you through step by step. It's easy for you to plan. It's a book. We give it to the families free. It talks about able accounts, stable accounts, and it has a letter of intent in it. And it just plans the future. It's so much easier than you have to sit down and you have to think about that. It talks to your health care plan, your medicines, and the person who takes over the care of your individual. It's all mapped out for them. And then we have Advocates in Action. That is a program that we offer as well for free, and it takes the individual through the legislation, and we have legislators work with our individuals and train them on how to be better advocates. And then our next program is Health and Fitness for All. And one of the great things we did this year was we partnered with the YMCAs. And it was great with community access. And our individuals were side by side with, it could be your neighbor, it could be your best friend, your sister, your brother. I mean, it could be anybody in the community. And they were just talking and having great conversations, and they learned how to, participate in classes, and it was phenomenal. And we have our best practice annual conference, and we do 6 tracks, 2 educational, employment, transition, and that's a 2-day event, and we have over 80 exhibitors, and it's full of resources. One of the main things about ARCs is that we provide the families free resources. We tell, there's plenty of doctors and books and fact sheets, and we're getting ready to give a new resource book, and we're getting ready to put that online for everybody to have. And we do special education training. And the self-empowerment group meets like once a month, and they pick a speaker, and that speaker could be on housing, community access, transportation. It's whatever they feel that's important for them and their needs. And then we also go out into the communities, and we go to stores like Starbucks and different places, and we see if they have the proper community access and how we can talk to them about changing it and making it better for our families and individuals. Now, for some of the services and supports for adults, I just am going to go through the list, and then Brandon and Amy are going to go into specifics, because it would take a long time to go through all these. So you have schools and your family resource centers, you have your health departments, you have SNAP, you have Medicaid, and I put on there the link that you could pull up the pages. On your Medicaid page, you have all kinds of minutes, and you have each waiver, and I brought some actual materials for you that I will leave. They have a new waiver pamphlet, they have a Money Follows the Person pamphlet, but all the minutes from the Medicaid meetings are on there. And I put that on Facebook. All of the new Medicaid information always goes on our Facebook page. There's K-CHIP, there's Medicare, there's a Civil Rights Advocacy Group Alliance, there's the Human Rights Commission, there's the Fair Housing. This even comes into play if you have a service animal and you have issues with your service animal. The Fair Housing can help you with that. Aftercare for drug treatment, vocational rehabilitation, that can come into play if you need supports for supported employment, for job training, even if you're planning on going to college and you need help with, like say you need a laptop or assistant technology or a smart pen, things like that. You've got TASH, you've got Sibling Leader Network. One thing I want to say to you all, support groups, family support groups, if you can get hooked up with those, parents are just great when you communicate with different parent support groups and you get together. Their knowledge is just powerful. It really is. It's amazing. And we've got a bunch of those, but like I said, that resource book that we're getting ready to put out, we'll have all of those in there, all their addresses, all their contacts, and you can have all of that. We're going to have it online, and we're going to have it in paper form. Okay, so then I have the next age group. State guardianship, Kentucky guardianship, again, Medicaid, Medicare, and Brandon's going to break those waivers down. And then community living, personal care attendant program. A lot of this stuff falls under the waivers. Assistant technology, residential services, positive behavior supports, durable medical equipment, Center for Independent Living, community mental health centers. A lot of times when you're getting your waivers, you have to go through the community mental health centers. Now, that is all changing with our Medicaid redesign, and I think Brandon's going to talk on that as well. Protection and advocacy, we have HDI, we have the CCDD, we have the main thing I would also say to you all, when you're coordinating all of these services, just think about the individual, because you can have all of these services available to you, but if you don't coordinate it right with your provider or your case management, it might not work out right for your individual, because you've got to listen to what they're saying to you with that person-centered planning. So you just always want to think about that. You've got OT, PT, and speech. And then I've already said the VOC rehab. Kentucky Works is a new initiative here in Employment First. Kentucky Voices for Health, that's a very powerful group that we're part of their coalition. They do a lot of advocacy work here in Kentucky. And college, like a lot of these universities, They support the ARC and a lot of stuff that we do. Their students come in and they will help you no matter what state you're in. They'll help your individuals with all kinds of different things because they need credits. Kentucky Assistant Technology Services, Carl D. Perkins Vocational Training Center. There's the Talking Book Service, CAP, which is what Amy represents. Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Underneath their webpage, which is the one I had the link to, like I said, there's tons of stuff under that. Cardinal Hill Health Care System, Easter Seals of Kentucky. Department for Behavioral Health. Kentucky Department of Education. We partner with the Kentucky Department of Education on our conference. So they actually have speakers come in and do part of our education track, along with one of the school systems. Habitat for Humanity. And then as you get 65 and up, you've got 211 is for everyone. And you can always call them and see if there's something that you need. They will try to assist you in finding that resource. AARP, Senior Transportation, Wheels on Meals, AAA, American Bar Association, the Alzheimer's Association. And then here's some national ones. National Academy of Elder Law, National Disability Rights Network, National Center for State Courts, Long-Term Care Ombudsman, I didn't say that right. Area Agency on Aging, Prescription Assistance, and Social Security. And just some of the recreational things, because I think it's important for our individuals to do recreation and social and communication. I think that's just as important of all the other things. To be involved like with the health and fitness, they had a really good time when we did that because it got them socially engaged. You've got Parks and Recreation in Kentucky. They do a whole lot of different things. They do drama and cooking and horseback riding and basketball. I can't even think of all the things they do here in Kentucky. You've got your Miracle League, your summer camps, Kentucky Special Olympics. And the Heart Supported Living Grant. It's a program that provides funds for supports to enable Kentuckians with disabilities to live in their homes and communities and avoid institutionalization. What it does is it gives supports for you to, it's a grant that gives supports to you to like modify your home or do some kind of support to your transportation. And some people have like remodeled their bathrooms, made a garage like into an apartment. So I would advise everyone, if you live here, to check that Heart Supported Living Grant out if you need extra modifications or personal assistance. And money follows the person. That's another important. And I've got a brochure on that if you all want to look at that. Many people live in facilities and they miss their homes. They might be in a nursing home or an institution, and this provides them that access to get back into that community. And we've helped 91,000 people since that's been out to get back into the community and live, a better life. And it costs less for them to live in their homes than it does to live in an institution. I've already said that. Okay, and the last thing that I want to give you all is, and I have some of these sheets for you, is the life course sheets. And they're just worksheets that you all can have that I have available, and they're just worksheets for your individuals and you to work with maybe your case managers or your family or other people. And it's got supported decision making. It's got charting your life course. You can work with your health provider, your family, anyone that you want to work with. And it's just blank pages, but it guides you on how to work with them and help them make the choices that they want to make. And I will leave all of that back here out front for you all.
All right. So let's talk about supports and services and everything that's out there. And let's all clear our schedule off because there's a lot, so we'll be here till Monday if I went down the line on every single thing that we've got to work through. So obviously I'm not going to talk about each and every one of them. We're going to break this down kind of generally in Kentucky, kind of the trend that we see like across the country, things that are underutilized, how folks can get into the services, how they research them, how they get a point of contact. Because let's be honest, there's a lot out there. There's robust services that are there. Everything that Sherry just went down and listed off is a resource for folks with varying degrees of abilities. The problem is that nobody knows they exist 9 times out of 10. And if you are lucky enough to get into the system, and I call it the system because it's a very convoluted system. If you're lucky enough to find a point of contact and you get into it, I mean, it's an ugly bag of snakes to lay out straight once you get in it. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I meet just throughout the course of a week that, maybe they support someone with Down syndrome that's 60 and they've never had services or formal supports. They don't know about estate planning or financial planning. They don't know about these waivers that we keep talking about. And so, the waiver system as a whole, and again, if we went down everything, we'd be here for a month. But let's focus on waivers and supports and what that looks like. So we say waiver. What does that mean? Every state has a waiver system. And basically what that is it's subgroups of people that are Medicaid eligible that require services and additional supports beyond that of traditional, like just Medicaid. And so these waivers, in Kentucky, for example, and this is the same with all states. Almost all states have some sort of waiver system. You've got services that are broken down for people with traumatic brain injury. You have services that are broken down for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You have things that are broken down for, in Kentucky you have the Model 2 waiver, which is for folks that require like respiratory care and things like that. Home and community-based waiver. These are all services that are meant to step in and help people maintain a life in their home and community. Because remember, the goal here is that people are living as independently as possible and out of facility. And when I say facility, I'm talking about things like in Kentucky, we call them ICFs. Intermediate care facilities, we call them hospitals, places that folks with disabilities and things like that have lived for 40 plus years in the most restrictive environment. And I'm not saying anything bad about ICFs, but ICF is not a normal life. It's not something that is out there for everybody. And so these waivers, they serve as a way to get people out, supported in a community, and their long-term care. That's what they're for. Once you get them, you have them for life, unless there's some sort of other factor that plays in that you can no longer receive them. Now, again, every state has these. Kentucky obviously has its components of supports for community living, which everybody calls the golden ticket waiver, like Willy Wonka, because if you get it, you're set. Like it's the most robust waiver we have. It offers residential services. It offers wraparound services for folks. Anything that you could think of. And most of all, it keeps you out of managed care. In Kentucky, if you're a waiver provider, you don't have to deal with Anthem or WellCare. Like your health insurance is carved out for now, and waiver services are carved out of managed care. And that's something else that you see from state to state. And if you're an advocate, if you're with your legislators, the big thing I can say about that is that nobody wants their waiver underneath managed care. It makes things more difficult, and managed care is a cost savings initiative. That's above all else. Managed care is a cost savings initiative. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll try to touch on it briefly, but more and more people are needing more and more resources. If we don't get innovative about how we're doing these things, then we're all going to be in a lot of trouble in a few years. We're already seeing it now. But anyway, the waivers as they're set up, the thing that we have to be careful of, you've got all these resources for, everybody's heard of group homes, everybody's heard of staff residences, all these things. So there's services that exist where, these waivers can help with residential pieces where, you have those group home options. They also have a lot of support for people living in their own home, living in a family home. You can divvy up your services however you want. And that means living at home, living in your own place, or if that's not what you want to do, then there are the staff residence and group home options for people. And some people fall into that. But you have day trainings, you have personal assistance, community access, all these services that are geared towards making people more independent. But that being said, Kentucky and waivers from state to state, and there's a lot of states that are doing a lot of innovative things. Minnesota does a lot of good stuff. Ohio is very innovative. In Kentucky, not so much. We've got a way to go still. We're kind of playing catch up in a lot of regards. A lot of people are receiving what I would refer to as cookie cutter services. And when you see that, that's basically stamp, and everybody's kind of getting the same thing. And that's a waste of waiver. That's a waste of resource, because you can break it up however you want to. But a lot of times, we've gotten into this situation where things just kind of keep going the way they have been, and people get used to things, and things are set up in a certain manner. And so change is scary. Change can be extremely scary for, folks with disabilities and families that have never had access to help before. And so once they do, like, a lot of people have a mindset of, this is how the services looks, and this is how they are. But they can be whatever you need them to be, is the point. And in the waiver system, like all the stuff that Sherry was talking about, being in a waiver doesn't exclude all those other resources. There is so much out there, so much. And the thing, like in Kentucky, like the best resources that you've got are like the ARC, the Human Development Institute at UK, but every state has an ARC or a support group or resources. You just have to, the important thing is word of mouth, spreading it to other people that don't have the supports and services and trying to bring them into the fold and making sure that they understand. But once they get there, as a group, we have to start looking at these services and how we're going to do this long term. Now, services differ from state to state. One waiver is not all states. Each state defines their own waiver. There may be a service here in Kentucky that's not in Ohio, and vice versa. They're completely different when you look at them, and they don't transfer. So if you're a Kentucky citizen and you move to Ohio, your waiver doesn't go with you, and your Medicaid doesn't go with you. And these resources, a lot of them, they're state and national. So, you have to be very mindful of that and what you're accessing. But, as we move towards, Kentucky is doing a waiver rewrite process. All these states, whether you're in California, whether you're in Ohio, every so often your state will go back in and readjust these services, and that's what Kentucky is doing right now. Kentucky is going back in and they're trying to redo their waiver system because it's broken. And this happens in a lot of states. And so you have companies like third parties that come in and evaluate everything, and they help redefine these services. So, but again, you have to remember, as we move forward, more and more people are wanting more and more services. And there's not a whole lot out there to begin with. So, like I said, we have to start thinking about that and what it's going to look like. So, and also in Kentucky, like, we're going to be moving to a point where people are receiving budgeting, based on their assessed need, and things like that. And a lot of states have kind of gone to that model where it's not a flat fee for rate service or rate for fee service. But anyway, so one of the things that I do in particular, and one of the things that, I've been doing this for a long time, like I said, and Sherry asked me to speak, the utilization of technology in our services and how we access that and what it is. Because technology is not ubiquitous. A lot of people take things like this for granted. A lot of folks with disabilities and in waivers don't have access to simple things that we take for granted. Plus, we're not really good at, especially in Kentucky now, other states have done some really exciting things. But integrating things like this into a system that will help folks be more independent, live fuller lives, and open services up for more people, because that's really what everybody needs, their services. But as a group, like, we have to start thinking about how are we going to help more and more people get the help they need? Families are out there just, on waiting lists for 20, 30, 40 years. Like, it's insane. So right now, No Boundaries, what we do, there is a service called Technology Assisted Residential. There's only one provider in the entire state of Kentucky that does it, and it's me. And so, because it's not worded in a way to, and I'm a case management provider, I'm a social worker. The reason I started doing it was because nobody else was doing it, and I was afraid it was going to fall off the books. But it goes, the utilization of technology goes way beyond that. And a lot of people think like technology assisted residential and technology assistance with folks. Like, everybody always thinks of like the Matrix scene with all, where he's sitting there and like all the videos are fired up, and like, it's not cameras, it's not somebody sitting there watching everything that you do. You know, we'll talk a little bit about what I call, or what's termed the Internet of Things, and I'm trying not to take up too much time with it, so I'll be brief. But I want to talk about these technology needs and what we're looking at. So, all right, everybody in here is probably familiar with the Internet. Now, if you closed your eyes and thought about the Internet, like, you're going to think different things. Like, I'm going to think Wikipedia and YouTube, because that's what I do. It may be online shopping for some people, it may be Skype for some people, but what a lot of people don't think about anymore are these big computers and hardware, and like cords and plugs and systems and things like that. Like, it's became so ingrained in our everyday life, like we just have it. Like, we just walk around and we have access to it, and we don't think about it, and it's ingrained in our everyday lives. And that's for us. But if you take that and extrapolate it out to what it can do for people with disabilities and people that have increased needs, like, this becomes more than a phone. It becomes a lifeline. And then you think about everything else that exists out there, like the capacity for being able to monitor specific situations and being able to respond, and integrating that into a service model and being able to support more people smarter. And so that's what we all need to like kind of focus on a little bit. You know, we started out, there's these movements that we've seen since the internet came around, like the fixed internet, where you had to go, like, I lived in Eastern Kentucky, so I had to go to the library and sit down at a big computer, and everybody remembers the dial-up sound and all that. And if we did that now, like, I mean, we're in bourbon country, like, you would increase your bourbon consumption if you had to use the fixed internet. And then it moved to mobile. So now, like I said, you're just walking around, you have access to this thing all the time, every day, and it's so ingrained in our lives, and it helps us. Then you've got the Internet of Things. Now, the Internet of Things, and I don't know if anybody in here is a real big fan of TED Talks, but I love them. So if you look at the Internet of Things, it's all these little gadgets and widgets and things that just exist out there, and you can monitor anything. I mean, if there's a sensor, like if my daughter, who is an hour and a half away from here, was to fart, there's a sensor that I could have on my phone to communicate that to me. I know that's probably a bad example, but you get the point. Like, there's all these things that exist out there, and this Internet of Things is like, you know, sensors, actuators, biofeedback, things for people that have active seizure disorders, things that we can implement to help monitor and learn and respond to situations, even sometimes before they happen. These are all things that exist out there right now in the world. And this Internet of Things, like this interconnectivity that we have, is something that we don't really do a good job. Like, I can control my thermostat from here. Why can't we take that knowledge, that tool, and extrapolate that out to support people more independently? And we can. And that's what my agency started doing, and that's what many agencies across the country have started doing. We started looking at ways that we could implement technology and allow people to live more independent lives, and offer, if they lived at home with a parent, younger children, like integrating these sensors into their life to help their parents feel a little bit more comfortable. Even if there's a caregiver in place, there's a lot of things that you as a family member can implement yourselves to kind of give you a little bit of peace of mind, because you can't be there all the time. There's so much stuff you can do with this. It's insanity. There's, like, right now, we support about 5 people through technology. And so this morning I monitored 3 medication passes with folks. I helped people make breakfast, and I wasn't even in the room. I monitored to make sure they were up on time. I made sure that 3 people got to work on time. All from this. And if you walked in these folks' homes, you would not know that they were getting help. It would be seamless. And that's the way it should be. It's not cameras. It's not invasive. There's all kinds of things that exist out there. And that Internet of Things allows us to step in and do that. Now, that's just what I'm doing. And that's a change. That's different from the norm. And so it's hard for people to get around that change and want to try something new. There's a million things that you know, are scary to folks when you do that. But this is a calculated risk for folks, and it's increasing the amount of, well, not increasing, but decreasing the amount of overall staffing and resources that they need, but providing them with the help they need when they need it, and being able to monitor from afar and being able to step in when you do need to. But this Internet of Things is something that we all have to start thinking about in terms of like how we're going to support folks, how we're going to support more people, and how we're going to move forward in the future. Now, the tactile internet is the next step. The tactile internet is what it sounds like actually reaching out and touching and interacting with your environment. This is where how a doctor can do a surgery in Lexington, and they may be in California. We're no longer bound by what we have at our discretion, like within our own communities. This allows us to branch out. This allows us to reach out and access more resources. So all these things are coming down the line, and we actually, I mean, right now, like we live in a time where all this stuff is available to us. But we have done a very poor job of integrating it into our service models and making sure that folks know how to access resources and all these things. So we've got a lot of work to go with this. Now, where do you go from this point is we have to, as a group and as family members, like if we're going to progress, we have to allow people the right to take risk. Everybody deserves the right to take risk. Everybody learns in a different manner. Think about like, okay, when I went to college, and that was a very long time ago and very scary, but I left the house, and we have these life experiences that teach us how to do things. And we sometimes we make mistakes, we learn from them, we move on. A lot of people that I work with, though, over the years were not afforded that same opportunity because we've really kind of built a ball around them, and we've not allowed them to take risks, and we've not allowed them to learn in these situations. And so technology is another piece of this, to where we allow folks the right to take risks and from them to learn from their mistakes and for them to learn on their own. And that is a big part of this. And there, like I said, though, there's a lot of people of varying abilities. This technology and these services and all these things can be implemented for folks of all abilities. It's different for everybody. The person defines what their services are. The person defines what their needs are. We have to advocate for more technology integrated into our service systems. But above that, we also have to advocate as service providers, as people needing services, as families. We have to advocate for universal design. We're really good at having applications that are good for people with physical disabilities. And there's legislation that monitors that. But all these things that we access, sometimes people with varying degrees of abilities need different ways of interacting with things. And so we have to advocate as a group that these technologies, as they come, that they have a universal design to where everyone can access them, everyone can use them. Otherwise, it's pointless. And we have to be able, most of all, we have to be able to take a leap and move beyond what we know and what is the status quo when it comes to services and resources. You know, we have to move beyond where we're at right now. Otherwise, you know, we're not going to grow as a group. Our folks that we work with are not going to grow. People are going to be left without services and supports. There's a workforce crisis across the country right now. There's all these things that, you know, there's problem after problem, but there's ways to solve them. And everybody here, has to advocate for these changes. We have to advocate for ways for folks to get the services that they need in the best way possible and the most individualized need. With that, I will hand it over to Amy.
Thank you, Brandon. Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here and talk to you all. My name is Amy Stade. As I said earlier, I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Association of Private Providers, CAP. We're a trade association, so our membership are nonprofit and for-profit companies who provide services to adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities through 1915C Medicaid waivers. Our members serve about 10,000 Kentuckians. It varies based on the day, but it's about 10,000. So we're talking about the landscape of services for adults with disabilities. Some of what I'm going to say, a lot of what I'm going to say is kind of data-driven, so bear with me as I work through that today. It's been estimated that about 7.3 million people in the United States have an intellectual or developmental disability. Only about 1.2 million of these people receive supports through their state Medicaid agency or their state developmental disability agency. Generally, when they do receive support, these services are provided through a Medicaid waiver, as Brandon and Sherry said. Nationally, about 75% of Medicaid waiver recipients are over the age of 22. So the vast majorities of individuals served by Medicaid waivers are adults. A big trend in Medicaid-funded waiver services for individuals with IDD are the self-driven services. The self-directed Medicaid services means that a participant or their representative have decision-making. They have a little bit of authority over the services that are provided. So as Brandon was saying, a lot of services tend to be cookie-cutter. In Kentucky, we have the golden ticket SCL waiver. And there's sort of a lineup of services that an individual can get. With the Michelle P. waiver, you see a lot of in Kentucky, we call it the participant-directed option. And you can kind of pick and choose who your caregivers are. You have autonomy in budgeting for yourself. You can really drive your set of services so that they're truly person-centered. These services have to be person-centered, according to CMS. That's the goal, and it's really a best practice. Person-centered really means that the process is directed by the individual with assistance if they need it from a person that is chosen by the individual. Support brokers have to be available for each individual who elects the self-driven option. And the support broker sort of acts as a liaison between the person and the state Medicaid program. So they are a go-between and help communicate the needs of the individual. The 2014 Medicaid home and community-based rule requires that individuals with services for the IDD population need to be inclusive, person-centered, and community-based. In studies of people with IDD who moved from institutional settings to community homes, the daily living skills of people who lived in the community settings were vastly improved, whereas those who lived in a facility didn't show much improvement at all. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the U.S. live in many different types of community settings. They include their own home, staff residences, group homes, foster homes, family care homes, which are not the same as living with your own family, but we'll get into that later. And studies indicate that more than half of the people with IDD receiving a Medicaid service actually live with their own family. States with the greatest proportion of individuals living with their own family are Arizona, California, South Carolina, Ohio, our neighbor, Delaware, and Nevada. In contrast, states with the smallest proportion of individuals living with their own family are Colorado, Connecticut, New Mexico, Alaska, and Maryland. Differences in the proportion of individuals with IDD living with family members, it sort of depends on whether or not your state program serves children and adults both, And we find that in states where a high proportion of services go to children with disabilities, they tend to have the higher ratios of that population that live with their families. So in states with large populations of adults served by Medicaid waivers or in Medicaid waiver programs, generally those adults don't live in their own family home. Many of these adults live in group settings. Nationally, an estimated 210 waiver recipients with IDD live in, 210,000, excuse me, waiver recipients with IDD live in group settings. States in which more than half of all Medicaid waiver recipients with IDD live in a group settings are Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, DC, Alabama, and Connecticut. States in which fewer than 5% of Medicaid waiver recipients with IDD live in a group setting are Washington State, Indiana, and Nevada. Nationally, these group settings tend to serve 3 or fewer people. Of the group settings, 61% serve 3 or fewer people, 30% serve 4 to 6 people, 8% serve 7 to 15 people, and 1% serve 16 or more people. In Kentucky, when we talk about staff residences, typically they'll include 3 adults will live in a home in the community that'll be staffed by a direct support professional, and then these individuals are generally supervised at all time. There are variances on that, like technology supported living, but generally that's kind of what you see. While group settings are the most common living environment outside of the family home, there's recently been increased interest in family care homes. Approximately 5% of waiver recipients nationally live in a host home or a family care home. The current interest has really been spurred by a 40-year push to move individuals with IDD into the community. Lawsuits related to the Olmstead decision require states to find cost-effective, community-based ways to provide services to this population. Some residential settings, group residential settings, are just not very home-like. And with a family home provider, you truly are in a home. Generally, a family will approach the state Medicaid agency and become certified or licensed, it kind of depends on the state, to provide services to an adult with a disability or several adults. And that adult will, through a placement process, will move in with the family and truly become integrated into the family life, while also, receiving supports and care and accessing the services that they need. I think that when we talk about adults with disabilities, one of the top worries of any parent is what would happen to their child if that parent died or became incapacitated and could no longer care for that child. For parents of adult children with disabilities, care planning is often complex. From a state standpoint, caring for adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities is further complicated by the aging caregiver population. So as our caregivers are aging, they're no longer able to provide the level of support that their children need. In Kentucky, we're also finding that many adults with disabilities haven't been formally diagnosed, simply because they've lived with their family their whole life. This lack of an IDD diagnosis kind of complicates Medicaid waiver services because there's no documentation of a disability throughout the person's life, and it creates problems to accessing care when it is needed. Kentucky's trying to navigate the issue, but it's vitally important for an IDD diagnosis to be documented through an individual's life to ensure that waiver services are available when you need them. Even when an IDD diagnosis is documented, accessing Medicaid waiver services isn't always easy. Nationally, an estimated 200,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are living with a family member and waiting for a waiver slot to open. That means they're waiting to access services. In Kentucky, as of the beginning of July, the Michelle P. Waiver waitlist is 6,860 people. That's 6,000 people who can't access services that need them. The Supports for Community Living waiver waitlist is about 2,600. And I'm not trying to scare you, but I do encourage you to access waiver services, to apply for waiver services before you may need them, because there's probably a wait list and it's probably pretty long. Planning for financial futures is also really important. Medicaid eligibility, as I'm sure you all know, has a financial component. Medicaid programs place caps on the amount of assets that an individual can have to receive social assistance. This is true for adults with disabilities as well. That cap is generally around $2,000 in assets, retirement funds, or anything of significant value. Essentially, to remain eligible for public benefits, an individual has to remain poor. This is where ABLE accounts come in. ABLE accounts are tax advantage savings accounts and allow individuals with disabilities in their family to save more than the $2,000 cap placed for the $2,000 cap placed to access services. So essentially, it allows adults with disabilities to seek meaningful employment, to save money without fear of losing the services that they need. With ABLE accounts, the government has recognized the extra significant costs of living with a disability. These include costs relating to raising a child with a disability or a working age adult with a disability for accessing housing, transportation, personal assistance, and health care that isn't covered by Medicaid and Medicare. In Kentucky, we don't really have the health care issue, but ABLE accounts, as I said, allow individuals and their families to establish savings account that won't affect their eligibility for SSI, Medicaid, or other public benefits. I encourage each of you to reach out to your state to see if you have an ABLE program. In Kentucky, for those of you, it's called Stable, and it's run out of the Treasurer Allison Ball's office, so State Treasurer, ABLE account, Stable. They're actually doing a statewide tour right now to promote and encourage use of the ABLE account, so I would reach out to them if you live here. To sum it up, services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities are becoming increasingly person-centered, community-oriented. Adults with disabilities have the opportunity to choose their own services, manage their care providers. They no longer have to fear losing benefits because they want to be employed. But as caregivers age, planning is vitally important to ensure that adult children with intellectual and developmental disabilities can access the services they need to thrive. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. If any of you have any questions, you can find me after. Thanks.
I'm not in charge, but I'm going to fake it. We've got a few minutes here before we hit our hour. So are there questions that you might have for any one of our presenters? I know that was sort of a fire hydrant of a lot of information across a wide spectrum. And so you probably have 1,000 questions. But is there anything specific that comes to mind that you'd like to ask one of our presenters before we release them? Yeah, all right. All right, you let me know. We'll talk after, okay? No? You don't want to talk after? All right, fair enough. Any questions? Yes. Okay. So the question is about accessing and finding out what particular waivers might be available in each state. Somebody want to grab that one? You want the golden ticket? Yeah, I think that really is a Wonka thing, so I don't know.
So every state is very different. And I know in Kentucky, Kentucky doesn't really have a whole lot of good avenues for folks to go, and that's kind of, I work with the cabinet on initiatives to help education and outreach. Now, Every state, though, has, your advocacy groups like the ARC and things like that. But, the best thing to do is if you just, the way I find out about things is that I sit down and I absolutely have gotten to mastery of the art of Google. And like, you just have to, it takes effort. It's a full-time job almost to find the resources that exist out there. And you have to call and you have to research, and your state, like the state, actually has offices. In Kentucky, it's the Department for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. Every state has an analog of that. So, and they're not that hard to find. If you go through Medicaid, like, you'll eventually chip away and you'll get to where you need to go.
Just to add to that, Social Security offices can help a lot, and generally those are pretty easy to access. Also, universities, generally every university is going to have a behavioral health program, and those professors are generally a tremendous resource to people.
If you call the ARC of California, I guarantee you they're going to give you every resource. They are a very active ARC, and they know a lot. So I would call them.
And Pat, who's going to be presenting, is from California, and so see Pat before she gets away and get that. Obviously it's overwhelming when we hear, master Google, because we're trying to master genetics and we're trying to master Google and we're trying to master Medicaid and all of that, and it's one of the challenges for us as parents, right? And so I think finding advocates, asking the right questions in the right places is a key. So, all right, well, we're actually transitioning right into our next session. So